I've been reading recently, Jean-Michel Jarre was saying recently in Mojo that he doesn't think that the surface has really been properly scratched even with regards to the future of electronic music. And by the same token, I also read a quote from one of your contemporaries, Steve Jansen, who I interviewed a few years ago, who said that he doesn't like the copy and paste mentality of things like GarageBand, and he thinks that inhibits creativity. What are your views on that?
I mean, the thing is, it started off as a, we all, I am a good socialist. I grew up in Sheffield, Socialist Republic of South Yorkshire. I love the idea of the emancipation of creativity and the kind of emancipation of the means of production of music. Completely down with all that. As far as I'm concerned, if every person spent less time watching TV or watching YouTube videos and spent more time making music, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And things like GarageBand and a lot of iPhone and iPad apps enable you to play with music in a significant way.
Yes.
Right, let's put that on one side.
Okay. I agree with you as a man that has a lot of synthesizer apps on my iPad.
I've got them all, and I'm obsessed with the whole thing. And it does save time and therefore money. And the way that people approach you to do stuff, budgets are lower than they've ever been because they know it doesn't cost you as much to create stuff.
Yes.
Having said that, the level of experimentation it engenders laziness. I'm afraid. I've got a great story. I think it's great anyway. My son, who's now 14, but he was 12 when this happened, he said, I'm doing a scouting badge at Scouts. What is it? Creativity. Okay. He went into he's got a Mac laptop, it's got GarageBand on it. Came out after half an hour. With half an hour, I'm reinforcing that, with a piece of music that was actually completely acceptable as a piece of kind of, something you might expect to hear in Hotel Costas or something on one of those albums. Yeah. And it's going, it's quite good, this, Dad, isn't it? Because everything auto stretches, it's all in tempo. Yeah. He's got a bit of a musical ear, so it's all in the right key, and he listens to a lot of music, so I've got a huge music collection. And I'm going, it's all right, that. And the problem is, it's always all right. Yeah. That's the problem. So there's no, and he took it in, and of course he got his badge, and he was perfectly happy. That one story kind of sums up for me how I feel about it. It's like it's all right. Yeah. But what do you want? All right, or do you want excellence? Yeah. Because
that's why I asked the question, because it all seems a bit too easy, doesn't it?
The final 20 or 15 or 10% takes 300% of the time.
Yeah. I read a quote from David Bowie, 1978-79, said that you folks were the future of music, which must be nice to hear, I should imagine, at the time.
He came into our dressing room at the Greyhound. God, what was it called? It was down at Barons Court. Barons Court. It was a pub, like a punk pub. And we were playing with the Humour League, and it was like one of those dressing rooms which were floor to ceiling graffiti, no door on it. It was complete wreck. And then there's like David Bowie walks in unannounced with an entourage of like 10 people. I've got a photo of it in my studio actually, just to prove it actually happened. And then the next day it was in the Enemy. He said, Humour League, and he was in this sweaty pub, right? Literally held about 150 people. That's weird.
That's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
You must have had piles of equipment in those days to produce the sounds. Really?
No, we had a backing. We had to have it all on backing.
You had to have it on tapes.
On tape.
Tape, really?
Yeah, one stereo tape.
Yeah.
So because otherwise we would have had to have
fleets of lorries.
It would have been like multiple Rick Wakeman's. We were working in a kind of. Well, it started off as like a kind of electronic chamber orchestra, I suppose. Yeah. But as it got more developed, I mean, we'd have like maybe, 16 different synth tracks or 24 different synth tracks on a track, and it got more and more complex. And how are you going to reproduce that on stage?
Yeah.
The digital technology didn't exist.
No.
What we're going to do? Cart on a 24-track tape recorder? There's no point in that, apart from the expense. not
24 synth players?
Yeah, 24 synth players, where are you going to put them?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had to have backing track. And we
Right.
made a point of it. We were very honest about it. We didn't want it to look like
No.
karaoke or anything. So we actually put it on stage and it was part of the band.
Yeah.
Right, and of course, immediately OMD nicked the idea.
Yes, they did, didn't they?
And I think even Gary Newman did at one point. They like the aesthetic of it.
Well, the look of it, yeah, looks
Yeah.
cool, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What do you consider to be great electronic albums from that period now, looking back?
Oh, Trans-Europe Express is my favourite. That made me want to do what we did.
Yeah.
That one album. I mean, I knew and listened to and bought Kraftwerk before that point.
Mm.
But there's something about the something clicked inside my head. I think it's because I went to a garden party. It sounds very posh, and it wasn't. More like a blues party in the back garden of one of Cabaret Voltaire's houses in Sheffield on a warm summer's evening, and they got in from their mate like this, 2K rig. I'm sure the neighbours were really thrilled, and they were doing some DJing and stuff, and particularly some of it was like Throbbing Gristle and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But then,
Being Sheffield.
I can't remember what year it was. It must have been 77, perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, it's just when Trans-Europe Express had come out.
Yeah.
And on this rig, which is the first time I'd heard it, they played, the first track, Trans-Europe Express. And I thought, because until then I thought Kraftwerk were a bit wimpy, to be honest.
Yeah.
In much the same way as I never really liked Tangerine Dream, even though they're electronic.
Yeah.
It was too hippie for me.
Yeah.
It didn't, because I came from loving, prog rock and glam and, things with bollocks, like Van de Graaff Generator and, King Crimson and...
Things with a proper bass and drums.
Yeah, rock.
Yeah.
Rock. I mean, I quite like rock, you know. And then this sounded like, for the first time, it had the same amount of bollocks as something that really had a visceral effect on you, rather than an intellectual effect.
Yeah.
And I thought, that makes me want to do it.
Yeah.
I remember thinking consciously to myself, that's it. If I ever get any money, I'm buying a synth.
Well, I was listening back to Penthouse and Pavement a bit yesterday, obviously, in preparation, as it were. And it struck me that you had a little bit more of the sort of chic thing going on than a lot of the other electronic acts at the time.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more funk in it.
And there's a great circularity about this. I met Nile Rodgers about 4 or 5 years ago, actually. What an amazing guy. Anyway, got on like a house on fire, as most musicians of a certain level tend to. And I wouldn't put myself on the same level as him. He's a god to me. But he was saying to me that they were looking back when they formed Chic. They were inspired by Roxy music.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Particularly the look.
Yeah.
But also a little bit of the avant-garde stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I hinted that. So like the fact that Chic dressed like in this immaculate style, and the girls always looked kind of sharp, and everybody thinks it came from the fact they wanted to look good in a disco. It was actually their interpretation of a kind of Roxy music-esque thing. Anyway, so that's quite good because we were inspired by Roxy music as well. When we started Hem 17, and we brought Glenn on board, Glenn and I and Ian all used to go to the same parties. We used to hang out. We were best mates, right from mutual days in the mid-70s. More so than Phil. Phil was my schoolmate.
Yeah, because didn't you want originally Glenn for Human League?
Yeah,
before?
I mean, if Glenn had been in Sheffield, he would have been the first port of call.
Yes.
But he wasn't. He was doing his own thing in London with a band, actually, at the time. So I brought Phil in, who wasn't known to everybody else. He was just my mate from school. And so the Human League became a very kind of... he had a manifesto, everything had to be electronic and everything had to be blah, blah, blah. And it was always very kind of fantasy and science fiction based. There was never any songs about, well, a couple of songs about love, but not really.
Yeah. Mostly about circuses of death.
Yeah, but it was very filmic and,
Yes.
and literary influenced.
Yeah.
And we loved all that, and it was great. That was right for that time. And then, but actually, while that was going on, actually, what me and Ian and Glenn were doing, were going to like house parties in Sheffield, where we were dancing to, you know, fairly avant-garde stuff sometimes, but also disco and imported American dance records.
Right. Interesting.
So, like, as soon as
that comes out, I think.
as soon as we started with M17, it was like having the shackles taken off.
Yeah.
It's like, right, we can be chic now if we want.
Yeah.
So we hunted guitar. You know, how lucky were we? We happened to find John Wilson, who happens to be one of the world's funkiest ever guitarists at 17.
That's a nice scratchy guitar on there. Isn't
Oh
it?
my God! No, not just that, and the bass as well. He played the bass. So we just got lucky, really. But we were aiming in that direction anyway. So hence, as we moved through the M17 thing, we started with strings and brass. You know, we got Phoenix horns from Earth, Wind and Fire, and you know, but you know, a lot of this is down to the support of Virgin Records, who just basically supported us throughout everything.
Yeah.
I mean, from a creative point of view.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, you're the artist, we're not the artists. You tell us what you want. That attitude does not exist anymore. Let me assure you.
No, because some of your contemporaries seem to go down a similar route of doing their own thing. I mean, Japan went their own way, didn't they? David Sylvian, particularly when he went solo, and Talk started off one way, went a very different direction because of the support of the record company. That's not around now, really.
No,
either, is it?
no. They don't support you. I mean, they don't. Generally, you don't get advances apart from to actually make records. I mean, everything is about the recording budget.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you don't get they don't acknowledge that you need money to survive. You're expected to do that. You're expected to do that by performing live. That's the only way you can do it now.
Right. A lot of these bands wouldn't have survived that way, would they?
Oh no! In today's market, I'd have never had a career.
No.
It's as simple as that.
So can I ask you what you listen to at the moment? What do you listen to now?
Everything. Still, I've always had completely eclectic tastes. I listen to a lot of classical music. I listen to a lot of funk. I mean, I just listen to everything. World music. You know, Spotify. It's like whatever mood you're in.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just my research tool. So I just listen to all sorts of new stuff. And,
any modern artists you're particularly impressed with that you think will do something creative and interesting?
Yeah, I do. There are a few. I like Friendly Fires. I like Everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I quite like Frank Ocean's album, but that's because it reminds me of a lot of old stuff. I'm still a soul boy at heart.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
You know, I still like it, like song structure, and I like narrative. You know, I can't get away from it. It just doesn't do the same for me. I mean, I love electronic dance music. We kind of involved round about the start of it. I still get a lot of kind of compliments and respect from established DJs. But you know, it's a bit of to me, it's a bit of a dead end.
Yeah, I can see that.
It sounds a bit harsh, but you know, if you think about it, you think about house music. When did it start? Start of the 80s, right? It's 30 years old. When we started in 1977, say, 78, if you go back 30 years from now, it's post-war, isn't it? It's 48.
Yeah.
It's like, can we not move on?
Doesn't seem to have evolved, no.
Can we not move on?
Yeah. Interesting. Good.
I mean, it's in a strange sort of way, you know, we tend to feel that everything is kind of accelerating exponentially, don't we? Culturally. It's, you know, like processing power is improving computer-wise exponentially, and storage is cheaper and cheaper, and you know, screens are getting bigger and bigger, and definitions are getting better and better. But like musical style-wise, we seem to be in a bit of a plateau, don't we?
We'll have to wait and see what happens, won't we?
I want a revolution.
Yeah.
I've still got that revolutionary spirit inside me. I'd like, you know, I would be thrilled if we were encouraged to do that by, you know, a record company of some description.
Yeah. I wonder whether the late 90s sort of collision of different styles would produce something radically new. Like I was thinking of Beck, for example, with Mellow Gold and Odelay,
Yeah.
sounding quite different at the time. But again, that doesn't seem to have gone on any further since then. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I despair, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like an old bloke. I don't care. I mean, like for instance, I'll give you an example. The new XX album has just come out. Arse, in my view. I think it's just shoegazing, minimalist nonsense. That, you know, I find it hard to believe that is going to inspire anything other than mediocrity. I want excitement. You know, I mean, I'm not saying everything has to be rock or everything has to be, you know, hyperactive. We've got plenty of that in the electronic music scene, dance scene. But it's all about engaging people emotionally.
Yeah.
Using whatever tools you've got. And I tend to feel that we moved away from that kind of emotional engagement in pop music. It all seems very kind of methodical and kind of, oh, this works, so we'll just replicate it.
Oh, it's been excellent speaking to you today, Martyn. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Pleasure.
Perhaps I could ask you one final question, perhaps to give a recommendation other than Trans Europe Express, which we all know is brilliant. If you were going to say to somebody, listen to this record to get an idea of what I'm about, which one would it be?
What, one of my own?
One of your own, perhaps one by somebody else. Put you on the spot, didn't it?
God. Just one. I mean, you know, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, I can't ever get away from Bowie, really.
Okay.
Low.
I'll give you a clue.
Low. Well,
I love that myself.
Low is a fantastic album. I mean, it changed my life.
Yeah.
That was about that same time, actually.
Yeah.
I remember listening to it on. I was in our kind of studio stroke workshop, and John Peel announced we got a world exclusive. We're going to play it all the way through on his show, uninterrupted, right? And we were all huddled around it in medium wave, listening to Low.
Yeah.
In our workshop, it was like a seminal moment for me because I'm going, this really, really doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard before. It's got the visceral nature of the best of kind of creative rock music, but it sounds otherworldly as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the peak of Eno's power, is collaborative power. You know, I've got maximum respect for that.
And what about your work? What would you pick out and say, go listen to this, people? What's your favourite
Well,
thing?
my favourite Hem 17 track is Let Me Go, because I know how much effort we put into that. It was like, I think we had 24 tracks all linked together, synchronised, when we were mixing that together with giant tape loops going around the studio, and it was like absolute madness. It took 15 seconds for the 24 tracks to synchronise at that point. Can you imagine?
Crumbs.
It took forever anyway.
Yeah.
And I still think it's a beautiful piece of work. But in terms of an album that we did, I think my favourite album is How Men Are, actually, which is the third album we did, which is lesser known.
Yeah.
But I just think there are some transcendent moments on that for me.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.